The Emperor's New Clothes, retold from the original by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time there was an emperor whose greatest pleasure was to buy and wear lots of new clothes. This emperor didn't take much interest in his army, and he wasn't much bothered about driving out in his carriage or going to the theatre, except to show off some of his new clothes. When his servants were asked, "Where is the emperor?" they were much more likely to reply, "He is in his dressing room," than to say, "The emperor is busy in a meeting." The city where the emperor lived was very gay. The people who lived there were very fashionable, and there were always plenty of visitors. One day, two swindlers arrived in the city. They went around telling everyone that they were weavers and that they were famous for making fine, patterned fabric. And the most incredible thing about our fabric, they told the people of the city, is that it is invisible to anyone who is stupid or unfit to hold his job. It wasn't long before the emperor got to hear the rumours about this amazing cloth. What a fine outfit I could have made from this cloth, the emperor thought to himself. But for once it wasn't just how fashionable he would be that was concerning him. Wearing that outfit, he thought, I would be able to find out which of the people around me are really suitable for their jobs. It would instantly become clear which of my courtiers was a fool and which a clever man. So the emperor had the two swindlers summoned to the palace. They were very humble in the presence of the emperor, but knowing his weakness for new clothes, they sang the praises of their amazing woven cloth. Of course, the emperor was easily persuaded. "I must have a suit of clothes made from this fine fabric," he declared, and he gave the swindlers a great deal of money to get to work. The swindlers bought two huge looms and started to work immediately. But there wasn't anything to see, because of course there wasn't really anything there. The swindlers asked for some very special gold and silk threads, and the emperor sent over a whole chest packed full of them. The rascals put them straight into their own pockets. They didn't need any of the thread for weaving their fine cloth, because they weren't really doing anything. The emperor wanted to know how his fine suit was coming along, but he had a funny feeling about going to see the weaving. Everybody in the city knew about the magical powers of this amazing cloth. Of course, he thought to himself, I have no doubt about how clever I am, or that I am the only person suitable to be emperor. Even so, I think I'll send someone else this first time. The emperor decided to send his trusted old minister of state. He's a wise man, and there is no one more suitable for his position. When the minister arrived at the swindler's workroom, he opened his eyes wide in surprise. "Oh, my goodness," he thought to himself, "I can't see a thing on that loom," but he was careful not to say so. The swindlers begged the nervous minister to come closer and admire the fine detail of their weaving. He stared and stared, but there was nothing there. "Can it really be that I am that stupid," he thought, "or that I am not fit to hold my job? I've never thought so, but I certainly don't want other people thinking that." So when one of the swindlers asked him, "Do you approve of the fabric, sir?" the minister replied, "Why, yes, it is indeed very fine," even though he couldn't see anything at all. The minister of state listened carefully to the description the swindlers gave of their fine fabric. Then he went back to the emperor and assured him that the work was coming along very well. Now the two swindlers asked for more money and more threads, and the emperor readily agreed. They pocketed these things straight away and carried on working on the empty looms. The emperor decided to send another of his most faithful ministers to inspect the work. The poor man was horrified when he entered the workrooms and saw the empty looms. "How can I let it be known that I am a stupid man, not capable of doing my job?" he thought to himself. So when the swindlers began describing the colours and design of the fabric, he paid special attention so that he could go back and describe it all to the emperor, which is exactly what he did. The whole city was talking about the fabulous cloth, and the emperor decided it was time to take a look for himself. He took his two trusted ministers with him and some other faithful courtiers. As soon as they arrived, the ministers who had visited the workrooms before spoke up. "Aren't the colours magnificent, your majesty?" said the minister of state, pointing to the empty loom. "Don't you admire the design? asked the second minister, certain that everyone else in the room could see the cloth. The emperor nodded and smiled, but all the time he was thinking, oh dear, I can't see a thing. Can it really be that I am so stupid and not fit to be emperor? But out loud the emperor said, Why yes, the cloth is truly magnificent. It certainly meets with our approval. All his other courtiers nodded too and murmured their approval, because each one was sure the others could see the cloth. None of them wished to appear stupid in front of their fellows. The emperor's advisers suggested that he have a suit of clothes made from the fabric for a special procession. He agreed and awarded each of the swindlers the cross of the Order of Chivalry to wear and the title of Knight of the Loom. The swindlers were busy working away on their empty looms. The day before the procession, they pretended to take the cloth off of the loom and go to work on making up the clothes. Late into the night they worked, cutting the imaginary cloth with scissors and stitching the air with needles as if they really were making a suit of clothes. The swindlers burned 16 candles in their workrooms so that everybody could see just how hard they were working. Then finally they put down their needles and declared, The emperor's suit is ready. When the emperor arrived, the swindlers held up their hands just as if they were presenting some new clothes. Here are the trousers, your majesty, one declared. This is the coat, said the other, holding his hands in the air. Just look at the cloak, they said. The other thing about this special fabric, they continued, is that it's as light as a feather to wear. Your majesty won't feel a thing. So the emperor stripped down to his long johns, and the swindlers carefully helped him to step into his new trousers, even though there was nothing there, and they knew it. They helped him on with his coat, and they even fastened the train of his cloak carefully around his waist. The emperor stood admiring himself in the mirror. How wonderful the suit looks, came the cry from his courtiers. What fabulous colours, what beautiful patterns, how well his majesty wears the suit. Then came an announcement that the procession was ready to leave. The emperor looked again in the mirror, and even though, as far as he could see, he was only wearing a pair of long johns, he turned from side to side and exclaimed, I am quite ready. Doesn't the suit fit well? The courtiers of course agreed, and the chamberlains fumbled on the floor where they imagined the train of the cloak must be. They couldn't see it, but they didn't want people to think they were stupid, so they just held out their arms as if they were carrying a magnificent cloak. So the procession set off. All the people were lining the streets or leaning out of the windows to get a good view of the emperor's famous new suit. What a magnificent outfit, they cried. The colours are splendid. The design is so unusual. Never had the emperor's clothes created so much excitement. Everybody was very eager to tell their neighbour just what they thought of the new outfit. No one wanted to admit they couldn't see anything and risk being thought a fool or not fit to do their job. Of course they couldn't see anything, because there wasn't anything to see. Then, all of a sudden, a small child shouted out, But the emperor hasn't got any clothes on! Good heavens, declared his father, looking highly embarrassed. Just listen to the innocent. The whispers started to pass through the crowd. What did the child say? He said the emperor has no clothes on. A child says the emperor has no clothes on. The whispers got louder and louder as the procession passed by, and then all together the crowd exclaimed, The emperor has no clothes on! And the emperor had a horrible feeling that they were absolutely right. Oh well, the emperor thought to himself, I've come this far, I'll just have to keep going. He drew himself up to look as important as possible and marched on at the head of the procession. At the same time, the emperor was deciding that he was never going to be so vain again and that he would try a lot harder to do his job properly. And although his chamberlains began to feel rather silly in front of the laughing crowd and looked at each other nervously, they kept on holding the magnificent train that wasn't really there. The end.